Hello, welcome to the Let's Actuate podcast. Today, we got the core four here. We've been building this thing from the beginning, and this is the building in public segment where we just talk about what's been going on. Now we have a little bit of a structure where we have some questions we're going to answer. So let's dive on in.
I like that. The core four. We should have that on our actuate hats. 100% working on it, by the way. Chris, you had an interesting topic that you brought to the table this morning just before the call. You want to kick us off on it?
Yeah. Video is bad. Is the audio bad?
Audio is great.
Okay. Fantastic. I'm going to try to kick us off while staring at my task manager and seeing what the hell is going on. So, primary topic is working remote culture and what that kind of entails for kind of a modern setup or even a pre-modern setup, right? On my end, I have been saying to people that I have been working remote for over a decade. It's kind of funny when someone during post-COVID, it was like, oh, you must have really enjoyed working from home. It's like, look, it was actually harder working. I actually worked more at home during COVID than before COVID because all of these people did not know how to work at home. So working remote culture is a culture. It's something that you learn, and there's a literacy and there's an efficiency. And then people who are uncomfortable with that kept pushing back. We got to return to the office. We got to do X, Y, and Z. It's like, I worked at a company that grew itself to $1 billion valuation in the time I was there, from like a relatively small EBITDA valuation. And so I can tell you that remote culture does work. It just depends on the fact that it is a culture. You don't mix and match, and you don't let things. You have to let new culture evolve. You don't just segregate and isolate things.
Yeah.
Right. How is everyone else's experience with remote culture and remote team? And then how does that impact our remote team building here?
Well, for me, I come actually from a background of always having to be on site. The only one of the companies that I worked for, I had opportunities every once in a while to be able to work remote, but it was like very micromanaging. Like if you're gonna be remote, you have to be connected on this system, you have to be online, and if for whatever reason you're working on something else, and you're not moving your mouse, it's like it will put you like offline after 5 minutes, I think. And then they'll message you like, why are you offline? And it's like, I have other things to do. I want to go to the bathroom. There's so many things that I have to do, right? Even when I'm on the office. But I think it really influences and changes. For me, it changed my perspective. It was one of the reasons why I decided to leave the company, because I was like, I know my value. I know I'm performing. I've been told several times that I'm exceeding expectations, but you still want to micromanage me and tell me if I don't see you online, if I don't see you doing this, if I call you at any time you have to pick up, like that doesn't work for me. And now being on the opposite side here, like being fully remote, it's nice because I feel like we're fostering that dependability on each one of us as a team. And we know for a fact that we don't need to be like, where are you? What are you doing? Or what hours are you working? As long as you deliver what you are supposed to be doing, that's all that matters at the end of the day. I don't care if your work, it took you 1 hour a week to do it, or you ended up working 40 hours or 50 hours. It's up to you. You get to manage your own time. You get to do it on your own terms. And we're not going to be telling you, you have to be here, you have to be online, I haven't seen you, you haven't, or I even message you and you didn't reply to me within 5 minutes. That's completely, it's not what we are striving to do here, which I really enjoy, because it really showed me like the other side of the coin, that it's possible for you to be able to perform in your own terms when it comes to time management. And I would say even do it better and feel happy and feel fulfilled with what you're doing rather than being frustrated that someone is like basically breathing down your neck and looking at you why you're not performing or doing things the way they want you to do instead of encouraging to you fulfill your own things.
That's got to add a level of anxiety, right? It adds this weight. It's like all my designer peeps out there will love this one. But it's like your manager standing over your shoulder while you're designing something and asking questions the entire time. It does not allow you to find that space of like optimal flow, right?
We called that level of micromanagement nano management in a past life.
Yeah. And Nicole, how's it been for you? Because I think most of your career, if not all of your career, has been fully remote, right?
I could pull from where I would have to be in person was during my second internship where we'd have to do on-sites, but it was during the height of the pandemic, so it was like stay 20 feet away from me.
Semi-remote.
It does feel, well, because I was my own independent worker freelancing by myself for like 3 years, that kind of felt isolating. But I just already, it was a trial and error for me because on top of also being remote, I had to figure out exactly how to schedule myself and keep myself accountable. So it was like through a lot of trial and error. I don't really have anything else to compare it to, so I guess I don't dislike it that much because I'm still doing it.
Yeah. And I'm interested how the dynamic is with you and finding that balance of like focused work, technical output, and living your life with that much freedom. So what kicked off this topic was a buddy of ours, Brian Reyes, shout out homie, posted a comment on a Simon Sinek conversation recently, which is kind of the shift of working spaces asking their employees not to work nights or weekends and trying to curate guidelines to facilitate a balance between work and life. His comment was, anyone else feel that weird tension from the don't work too hard while also knowing that some of us are so passionate and obsessed with our work that's like asking us don't be too fulfilled and enjoy yourself. And it really is this interesting shift that I've noticed just within myself. But how have you found that balance where like being remote has been your beginning from or your environment from the very beginning? And for those of you just listening, that was our dog Chase just popped on the screen to say hi. So make sure to check out the video. He wants to say hello.
I have a different view on like, don't see it as like, I see it as okay, I need to work hard right now and do what I gotta do, and I'm willing to sacrifice like my weekend, but like really my life isn't structured the way that everyone else's. Like everyone else's life is structured by I work Monday to Friday from 9 to 5, and then outside of those is like when you live your life. Like I have full autonomy to like do whatever I want today as long as I get my work done. So, like, I've worked weekends before. I've worked more than 40 hours because a week feel like life draining for me because I am able to just get up and go whenever I want. But for me right now where I'm at in life is that I'm like I keep saying this all the time when I'm up at 2 a.m. being like passion is what drives me and like keeps me up, and like I just need to do what I got to do to like set myself up for success for the next day. And sometimes it just like gets so much in the way that I can't go to sleep and I just need to do it. And sometimes the creative spark just feels so real at that moment, and I just need to do it because I'm motivated to do it at that time. So I think it's a balance and a dance within myself, as well as um, just like tuning into what feels right in that moment. Because I can't force creativity. I can't force when I'm trying to solve a problem and the solution comes.
Preach.
And that feels so much more natural and in tune with how I work and how, like, yeah.
Vibes. That's been kind of the story of my life personally as a creative problem solver. And I think of a lot of our design friends and our strategy friends and our dev friends, and anybody who deals with complex or complicated problem solving. Those light bulb moments come. Those flow states, while they can be induced, sometimes you just find a rhythm and you want to ride that wave. But like you said, it's not energy draining when that happens, right? It's actually fulfilling and invigorating. I've found I found myself in an interesting paradigm now where, actually, really quick before I go down that pipeline, Nicole, because you mentioned that you've worked over 40-hour weeks, and that's cool. And I know hustle culture is a thing. There's also like this balance of like, when is the threshold? Like, it's not always productive to be busy. And there's also the whole world of like toxic productivity and things like that. So I think it's really easy to be like, oh yeah, I worked a whole bunch. Have you also had the balance within yourself where you've worked less than 40 hours a week? And
Mostly I think because even even though there's give and takes to being your own boss and being a freelancer, and it's that like j- just because I've done this for a few years now, it's like ingrained in me that I don't deny money. I will, if someone asks me for something, I will do it. And I will just rearrange my schedule around it because I don't have a consistent paycheck. So like, you could look at my calendar now on how many deadlines I have these next 2 weeks. But I'm just like, okay, I would rather just work really hard these next 2 weeks, make as much money as I can, and then chill the next 2 weeks after. That's just how I look at it. Um, so I don't know. Like, definitely, I have to always check in with myself that I'm not doing that whole being toxic about it and having, exactly like that hustle culture and what it comes with. So I don't have, but I'm just doing my best.
for sure, and you're crushing it. One thing that I heard recently, and I've heard a few times, like that next step into creating this really flexible environment or lifestyle for yourself is disassociating the connection between your time and money. That dynamic is going to be different for everybody. But when you can figure out how to create value outside of the dependency on time in general, whether it's yours or other people's, that's what allows you to quantify and stack leverage. That's what allows you to scale. And I think we're starting to see the beginning of that with what we're doing here. Now, I say that having longer weeks than I have in a very long time, but it's like this high, this buzz that I'm personally dealing with, and I think everybody here kind of resonates with it. because what we've got going on is really, really exciting. Can't share some information with y'all this week, but you'll hear about it probably either next week or the week after. But some of the conversations we're having and the things we're putting together are just, they're pinch me moments. It's wild. But it's exciting, and it's invigorating, and very much like you were saying, Nicole, setting up the infrastructure now to support where this is going, super important. Like Chris always keeps me in check, making sure that it's not all just busy work, right? Like he reminds me a couple times a week, let's make sure anything admin is done either at the beginning or end of the day, outside of like prime time, heads down opportunity for flow states, or when people are in their normal working hours and we have to have meetings and conversations and engagements within those constraints that a lot of people are operating in. But yeah, no, I very much resonate with what Brian was saying in his comment, that some of us are passionate and obsessed about what we're doing. So being told don't work too hard is very much like, hey, because there's a separation in the people's minds that work does not equal pleasure, I believe. And some of us are very fortunate that that's not the case, that work equals excitement, fulfillment, pleasure. So I will work as hard as I absolutely can, because what we're doing is like just freaking cool. And it's really exciting. Chris, and how have you found it? Because I know that you've been on both sides of this, right? At the enterprise level where it's really, really rigorous, and also at this malleable, building something for yourself.
So I've worked the 100-hour weeks. I've also worked the 5-hour weeks, all while receiving the same pay check. But I've also been on the managerial side and the leadership side, and the perspective, which I'm now articulating thanks to Brian and Simon, is less on the individual, because I think we all everyone here has kind of hit it out of the park with their insights into themselves, and anyone listening will also have to find it within themselves, however they want to work most efficiently, most creatively, most passionately. From a team building perspective or a leadership perspective, I don't want to limit my team's ability to work, but I also want them to be very mindful of how others perceive them. So toxic productivity is not, to me, not toxicity in yourself, but how you might drag your team around. It's kind of that old stereotype, like, oh, back in my day, I worked, the farm and walked uphill both ways in the snow. It's like, that's cool, right? What does that mean for me, right? Am I supposed to be working more? So if you find yourself working best at 3 a.m., neat. But what is the most normal average person on your team going to do? Should you be sending them a slew of emails at 3 a.m.? Andrew and I are the leads, right? So if he sends me a message at 3 a.m., I'm not going to be upset at that, right? But if he's sending someone down the line later messages, right, I'm going to be upset with Andrew for doing that. And I was listening, and to sidetrack a little, I was listening to a vlog from Adam Savage just the other day, and he mentioned about when there are issues at work, who do you complain to? Complain up. When you're upset, don't complain down, right? If a subordinate of yours is making a mistake, it's your job as a leader to help them grow. But if it's if it is something that happened in an environment where you're not given the resources to help others grow, you should be punching up, right? It is our job to keep our leaders in check, and as the core four, we are we're at the very top. Eventually, this organization will grow to a lot of individuals. We should not be promoting ourselves to our team that we're working 100-hour weeks.
100%. Yep.
Right. Even if we are, we should never make it seem like they should be working harder because we are working harder. That is how we will burn them out. Because if we burn out, we're going to be falling into stereotypes like, well, I worked this amount this week. What did you do?
Yeah.
So I really like Brian's comments because it helped me really articulate and understand that in a leadership position, like, you have to be mindful of how to make others' time more effective without them dragging others around. So as the organization grows, I think one of the things I want to implement within every single one of our portfolio companies are not strict working hours, but strict communication hours.
Yeah.
You're free to work. Just don't make it seem like someone else is underworking.
Yeah, and that's a great call out too. One thing that we communicate with the team on a regular basis is family first, life first. Like you need to make sure that you have the space and the capacity and the bandwidth, like yourself, to handle what you got going on in the world, to be able to operate effectively. So that's one thing that we communicate. And secondly, there is not any expectation to work outside of normal operating hours, which is the traditional framework for communication time, I guess, which is that 9 to 5 concept, right? And not on weekends.
And many of the people that we will be working with, especially in government, are working just 9 to 5, and they have in their culture that they have integrated into their personalities. It is 9 to 5, right? So we want to respect that, and any of our partners, our future partners that we work with.
Yep. So I do love that. And one thing that I'm learning and shifting from is it's this paradigm. I'm going to share something that a previous leader told me when I was an IC in very much like an 8 to 4, 8 to 5 workspace in the finance industry. But a shift that is happening, and very much speaking to what Chris was saying, scheduling messages, if it's outside of business hours, and lining those up. I could jot them down, have them post wherever they go. Something I've just recently adopted, like starting yesterday. What was that, Nicole?
Slack, schedule a send, and like I haven't looked at it on Outlook yet, but I'm sure Outlook has it. But I do it on Gmail all the time, like just emailing clients. Also, I usually don't want them to know that I'm working late. But also for that sake, so they're like, why am I getting an email at 3 a.m. from this girl?
Yep. And that's interesting too, right? Like the impression that it gives off as well. So I'm doing some personal cleaning there because I do have a tendency to fall into flow states at odd hours. But also I remember there was a leader that I had gotten, I'd seen a leader online, or had gotten an email or a message to the team or something like that. And it was like 7 p.m. No, it was a communication that was sent out that was time sensitive. And I didn't want to send it out at like 7 p.m. But it was something that was important to communicate. And my previous leader expressed something, which was, outside of working hours, like, don't expect engagement or response, but things that are priority, it's your agency to determine if you want to communicate something in a particular way. And especially if another person, and this was about a senior level leader, wants to communicate or work or sign on or sign off at a particular time, it's not within us to judge that or hold it in any regard, because they are an individual and they have their own agency, and they could define when they want to engage. And I think there's a balance to that too. One, it's good to know and step into your own agency of making those decisions, but very much like Chris was saying, there is an unconscious messaging and influence that does have. So I'm glad that we're keeping aware of that from the very beginning while everything is kind of coming to fruition. And on that note, I'm going to transition into our follow-up question, which goes into what it's like to define all these things. Because we've scaled from a team of 4 to a team of, what are we at, 9 now?
9.5.
9.5. And that is not including our couple of satellite partners, resource partners. I think we're at like 12 or 13 with our satellite resource partners, but that's been over the course of like 2 months. So the question that's posed is, what are some of our tips for other teams that are building in a remote culture? I'll just tennis ball that out to the group.
I think one of the most important things, and it's we're a little luckier in that we're dealing with other professionals who are seasoned in their work and have seen the gamut of things. We're not dealing with like people coming fresh out of university or people relatively young in their career that only have 9-to-5 big tech company vibes, right? Who are relearning or learning an entirely new thing. We are blessed with contractors and counterparts and staff we fully trust in their professionalism.
Very true.
So how do we work with them? We treat them like adults that know what they're doing, and we don't need to handhold or worry that they're going to execute at all. We don't even give tasks most of the time. We just give direction, and they come up with tasks, and then they come back to us and they reveal things that we don't know. So I'm sure that will change, and we'll have to grow into a more structured standard company. But for the time being, what we're promoting with others is essentially, how do we work with them? Well, they figured it out, right? And then we figure them out and their cadence. It's give and take. It's a relationship that we're building. And our agreements, right? We're essentially getting married, as Josh would put it, for at least the next 10 years.
Yep.
These things are not to be taken lightly. And just like an actual relationship, you have to put in work to make it work.
Yeah, I fully agree with that. I think another important thing that you guys are really taking into consideration is like there's culture fit. Because if you can have a very talented individual, but if they don't fit in within the culture that we are all creating within the organization, and they're gonna become a disruption within, it's definitely not gonna work. It doesn't matter how bright you are. It doesn't matter how experienced or how perfect you might seem. It's just not gonna work. And I've seen a couple potential partners and people that we just said no because it's not working. If for me, especially for me, if I'm gonna work with someone and I start seeing like little red flags from the very beginning, before like saying, okay, this is engagement and this is how we're gonna move forward, I always ask myself, I'm like, okay, if they are willing to lie about this thing that is not even detrimental, that it's like, oh, I like whatever it is, like you have to ask yourself, what else would they be willing to lie or omit or create a story of their own to make themselves look good that would be impactful in a wrong way, in a bad way for the business. So it's just the little things. And if you start seeing those little crumbs along the way, it's like that's going to get into a bigger bowl. So I think that's really important. Have people that are they fit within the culture that we are harvesting here, and that we are like putting a lot of effort and energy into make it a good place and a fun place and a good team to be part of, that you feel proud to be part of this team, that you identify within your peers and you're happy about it. Like when they ask you about your job, it's not like when you ask people like, oh, what about your job? Like 90% of the people that are going to be like, oh, I hate it. I like to just have to go to work. Like it's Sunday. I'm already dreading Monday. And they have in these, still this state of mind on their own that is like, it just doesn't work. And I see completely the opposite here. I see the people that are excited about joining the meetings, about bring whatever it is that they've been working on. And I think that's a main differentiating factor from other teams that I've seen.
Yeah, 100%. And one of the things that I think is starting to solidify or clarity is starting to solidify around like listening to you and Chris speak, it's having the space, the emotional and psychological space and perceived respect and safety to have open channels of communication about stuff too. And that's the kind of environment that I think is conducive to what you all are referring to. And I do think we're very lucky with the dynamic that we're building in. I believe if you focus on your intended outcome and you take action toward it, I'll get a little woo-woo here. We're all energetic beings, but I believe that energy aligns. And you find yourself in more circumstances than not that are conducive and aligned to moving forward. It's not always true, and you just got to be aware. But we are very fortunate that it's seeming easier to move through the space. But I think it's mostly because we're hyper tuned in and very clear on what we're working toward and what we want, not just like in the goal or a product or a business or the revenue or the idea or the technology. We got really clear on what we wanted from a cultural standpoint, from a team dynamic standpoint, from a what is this thing going to be 10, 20, 50, 100 years out? And how do we set up the foundation now so that it continues to scale organically and is conducive to an environment where people love to come to work, where people are doing what they love to do? And they're doing it in such a way that is aligned with how they want to exist in the world, both personally and professionally. And how do we create avenues for those individuals to thrive and scale from? Getting really clear on that, I think, is a key part of how to build any kind of team. Is understanding how you want to, the space that you want to have and how you want to operate, the type of people that you want to work with, the type of things that you want to work on. Like one of the things that we made sure to do with everybody that we spoke to is like, what do you want to work on? What do you see yourself working on? In what dynamic do you imagine yourself? At what scale, what capacity are you working toward? And being really clear on what that intention and that trajectory looks like for everybody on the team, I think has been really, really important to determining if it's a good fit, if it makes sense, and determining if the space that we're creating is conducive and aligned to what their outcome is. So I think that's probably something that a lot of companies and teams might not ask themselves, but like, what do you want the vibe to be? What kind of people do you want to work with? What kind of people don't you want to work with? What kind of work environments do you love? What kind of working environments do you hate? And how do you create something that avoids becoming that?
Please help.
100%. 11 out of 10.
We'll come up with our own someday. But not now. Unless that's what gets your creative juices going, then by all means.
I am working on making hats. We're going to have some swag that we're working toward, everybody that's listening, but not like stereotypical, like, oh yeah, why do I care about your company or your logo? We're going to make some pretty cool. We are a team of designers, so we want to make stuff that aligns with the message that we're bringing to the world, the advancement of humanity, really innovative technologies, stepping into like actually creating the future. So we got some cool stuff lined up, but we are going to have some hats for all of us to rock. So keep on the lookout. Yeah.
Out
Let's
feels
do
like a
it.
natural close. I hope you enjoyed listening to our perspectives about working remotely and being a remote first company. Have a great rest of your day. Bye.
Cheers, y'all.
Bye, everyone.